Before we go anywhere today, and I mean this as something I actually feel rather than something I say, I want to acknowledge the particular kind of courage it takes to keep showing up for yourself when life is giving you reasons not to, when circumstances are complicated, when people around you are not always acting with integrity. The people in this community who keep returning, who keep choosing to understand rather than react, who keep doing the interior work even when the exterior is turbulent, you matter to me, genuinely. Now, let me tell you what I'm seeing, because this reading arrived with an urgency I cannot and will not soften. Something is happening around you, and something even larger is happening on your behalf. Iron. When iron ore comes out of the ground, it is dull, reddish, crumbling at the edges, heavy but without particular form. Nothing about it announces what it is capable of becoming. You could hold it in your hand and have no sense of the blade it contains, the structure it could form, the permanence it could offer. It looks like rock. It looks like ordinary earth. What's inside it is invisible until it meets fire. You are in the fire right now. Not because you did something wrong, not as punishment, not as the universe's indifference to your particular situation manifesting as suffering. You are in the fire because what you are requires it. Because the thing you are becoming, the clarity, the strength, the absolutely non-negotiable quality of self that is assembling itself through exactly this kind of pressure and heat cannot be produced any other way, cannot be arrived at through comfort or ease or the absence of opposition. And there is opposition. I'm not going to pretend there isn't. There are people in your orbit, some close, some at a safer remove, who are not operating with your well-being in mind, who are making moves, having conversations, constructing things in the space you don't have access to that are designed to produce outcomes that do not serve you. That is the uncomfortable truth at the center of this reading, and I am not going to soften it into something easier. What I am going to tell you is what else is true. And what else is true is the most important part. Let me look clearly at what's being planned against you, because I think naming it with precision is more useful than circling it with vague warnings. What I'm picking up is not a single act of opposition. It's a coordinated quality, multiple elements, possibly multiple people, operating in a loose alignment that shares a common interest in a particular outcome. An outcome that does not include you in the position you are rightfully moving toward. An outcome that serves someone else's comfort, someone else's arrangement, someone else's continued ability to operate without the accountability that your presence or your advancement would require. This is envy operating as strategy. That distinction matters. Pure envy sits in someone and burns them from the inside. Envy operating as strategy does something with the burning. It converts it into action, into whispers in the right rooms, into narratives constructed carefully around a version of you that has been edited to emphasize your weaknesses and erase your strengths, into moves made at moments of your absence or inattention when the stage is temporarily yours to vacate. You have been underestimated consistently by people who looked at your quietness and called it weakness, who looked at your precision and called it rigidity, who looked at your refusal to operate through manipulation and concluded that you must simply be unaware of what's happening around you, that you could be moved like a piece on a board without noticing. They have made a significant miscalculation. Here is where I need to stay for a while, because it's the center of what this reading is actually about. Something someone has moved, and I want to be careful about how I say this, because I am not speaking metaphorically and I am not speaking in the language of performance. When I say that Archangel Michael has stepped into your situation, I am pointing at something I genuinely feel in the energy of this reading with a clarity that is not subtle and not ambiguous, a quality of protective force, of something with absolute authority over what is being attempted against you, something that exists at a level that makes the machinations of the people in your situation look very, very small by comparison. Michael is the one who goes first, the one who steps toward rather than away from what needs to be confronted, who carries a sword not as a weapon of aggression but as a boundary, the clearest possible expression of what is allowed and what is not, what will pass and what will be stopped. And what I feel in your reading right now is the particular quality of that boundary being drawn, not around you in a way that cages you, around what is being attempted against you in a way that limits it. That contains it. That prevents it from reaching the depth or producing the effect that was intended. What they are planning is going to fail. Not because you outmaneuvered it, not because someone tipped you off in time to counter it, because something at a level above the human chess game of the situation has already intervened in a way that changes the rules of what's possible. The moves being made in the dark are being made against a board that has already been altered. The players doing the planning don't know this yet. They are still operating on their old assumptions, still placing their pieces with the confidence of people who believe they are operating in an unguarded space. They are not in an unguarded space. I want to talk about what this protection actually looks like in practice, because spiritual truth expressed only in spiritual language can sometimes feel distant from the ordinary texture of a life. And I want to ground this. The protection of Michael does not always arrive as lightning from above. It arrives in the specific details of daily life as a reconfiguration of what's possible, as doors that were supposed to close staying open, as information reaching the right people at the right moment to reframe a false narrative before it sets, as someone who is meant to be an instrument of harm against you suddenly becoming unavailable to that purpose, distracted, redirected, their attention called elsewhere at precisely the moment when it was supposed to land on you. As the plan encountering friction, it wasn't designed to handle. Watch for the friction. Watch for the moments where what was supposed to go smoothly against you doesn't, where the timeline someone was counting on gets disrupted, where a conversation that was supposed to happen doesn't, where something that was moving toward you at speed suddenly slows, shifts direction, dissipates. Those are not coincidences. Those are the signature of an active protection operating through the ordinary mechanisms of circumstance. And watch for something else, something in the behavior of the people who are working against you that signals they are running into resistance they did not anticipate. People whose plans are failing in ways they cannot explain tend to become erratic. They escalate when they should hold steady. They reveal themselves in their frustration in ways they would have concealed if everything were going as planned. That exposure is not accidental. It's part of how protection works. It doesn't just block the harm, it draws the harm into the light where it can be seen for what it is. The exposure is coming. And when it comes, you will understand the sequence of events differently than you do right now. Something needs to be said about you directly, and I want to say it without framing it as reassurance, because it's not reassurance, it's an observation. You have not been operating at your full awareness in this situation, not because you're incapable, because you've been giving people the benefit of the doubt that their behavior has not earned in the particular way that Virgo does when it has decided, for whatever reasons, loyalty, history, the preference for a world where people mean what they say, to extend good faith beyond the point where the evidence supports it. Something in you has known, not everything, not the specifics I've been describing necessarily, but something that peripheral, inconvenient awareness that lives below the line of what you've been willing to formally acknowledge. The thing that made you slightly uncomfortable in certain conversations without being able to say exactly why. The thing that made some interactions feel subtly off even when the surface presentation was perfectly fine. The thing that occasionally arrived in the middle of the night as a low-grade unease you couldn't quite name and so filed under general anxiety rather than accurate perception. That awareness was correct. The unease was signal, not noise. Part of what Michael's intervention does is bring you into alignment with what you actually know. Lift the perceptual material from beneath the line into clear view. Not in a way that is overwhelming or destabilizing. The protection includes the stabilization, includes the capacity to see clearly without being knocked over by what clarity reveals, but in a way that is honest. That brings the full picture into focus. That allows you to operate from actual information rather than from the polished surface version of events you've been presented. You are about to see more clearly than you have. And what you see is going to explain a great deal that has been confusing. I need to talk about your response to all of this, because the reading is not just about what's happening around you. It's about what you do with the position you're in. The instinct, and I know this instinct because it is deeply Virgo, deeply part of how you are built, is going to be to address it, to confront the people involved, to lay out the evidence of what you know and require an accounting, to use the clarity you're gaining to force a conversation that puts everything on the table. I want to offer a different approach, not because your instinct is wrong about the substance of what needs to happen, but because the timing and the mechanism matter. What is working on your behalf right now does not need your intervention to complete its work. The protection that has stepped into your situation operates more efficiently when you are not lunging toward the thing it is already handling. When you stay in the quality of your own conduct, clear, consistent, excellent, exactly yourself, you become increasingly difficult to successfully misrepresent. Every day that you simply are who you are, without the distortion of reacting to what's being done in the shadows, the false narrative about you becomes harder to maintain, and the true one becomes more undeniable. Your integrity is the weapon Michael hands you, not drama, not confrontation that gives the opposition material to use. The sustained, unassailable reality of who you actually are, visible to anyone who is genuinely looking. Let that do what argument cannot. There's something about the urgency of this title, the oh my God, the warning signs, the emergency quality of it that I want to address directly, because I think the urgency is real, but I don't want it to produce fear. And I'm aware those two things can be difficult to hold simultaneously. Yes, something is happening that needed to be named urgently enough that this reading exists. The planning against you is real. The intention behind it is not benign. The potential impact, if it were to succeed, would be meaningful and negative and worth taking seriously. And simultaneously, you are not undefended. You are not facing this alone. You are not in the position of someone who has only their own resources against a force that has been coordinating in the dark. because something has stepped into the space between what's being attempted and what's actually going to happen, and that something is not equivalent to the people planning against you. It is not operating at the same level. It is not subject to the same limitations. It does not run out of capacity or get outmaneuvered by the cleverness of human strategy or lose its orientation when things get complicated. You are covered. That phrase, you are covered, is the one I keep returning to as the center of what needs to be said. Not just protected in the sense of having a shield raised, covered, attended to, actively watched over by something that has a direct and personal relationship with your situation and has decided with full awareness of what's happening to move. Let that replace the fear, not as denial of what's real, as accurate information about the full picture of what's real, which includes both the opposition and the protection, both the planning and the intervention, both what's being attempted and what it is running into. Let me say something about the aftermath of all this, the shape of things on the other side of the period you're currently in, because I don't want to leave you inside the urgency without also showing you what it opens into. What's being attempted against you, if it were to succeed, would have kept you smaller than you're meant to be, would have maintained an arrangement that serves other people's comfort at your expense, would have prevented a movement towards something, a position, a recognition, a clarity about your own situation that is genuinely yours and has been moving toward you for longer than the opposition has been trying to block it. The blocking fails. What it was blocking continues toward you. And when you arrive at what this period has been building toward, when the clarity is complete and the false narrative has collapsed under the weight of its own exposure, and the people who were planning in the dark have been moved out of the space they were occupying, what you find there is not just the absence of opposition, it's room. Room to be fully what you are without the energy expenditure of being misrepresented. Room to operate from your actual strengths without the constant subtle friction of people working to undermine them. Room to move toward what you want in a landscape that is no longer littered with the obstacles that were being deliberately placed. That room is coming. It is not far. The clearing is closer than the current landscape suggests. I want to hear from the community today about something specific, and I'm asking about this because it came through so clearly in the reading. That peripheral awareness I described, the thing you've known but haven't been willing to formally acknowledge, the inconvenient perception that has been running underneath your conscious assessment of a situation in your life. Has that been present for you? Not as certainty, as something more like a persistent unease around a specific person or situation that you haven't been able to fully justify. Tell me in the comments if you felt that recognized, and if you felt at any point recently that something was working against you in ways you couldn't quite see clearly. Tell me that too. You don't have to be specific. I want to know how many of you are walking through this particular fire right now, because you are not walking through it alone. That's the most important thing this reading came to say. Whatever is being planned in the dark against you, something far larger has already stepped into the light. Rest in that and keep going.